So improving as a chess intermediate, let's say for an example, you're 1200, 1300, like you've just became an intermediate, and now you're trying to improve, that is going to be actually quite an uphill battle at the beginning. Okay, that is how at least it felt for me when I started. We can certainly shorten the amount of time that it takes to really improve, and definitely increase the wins that we get whilst doing this. And the way that we can do this is to improve on very specific topics that a lot of intermediate players, they seemingly fail to understand. This is from my own experience when I was improving from 1400 to 1600 at least. So let me give you my own proof. Here I didn't really play. I had something going on, but here you can really see like 1400. It was more of an uphill battle, but here again I didn't have that time to play. We can certainly shorten this time to improve, and you can see like I can play, I can move this thing around, I have a mouse. We can certainly shorten the time that it takes to improve as an intermediate player, like to the upper levels of intermediate. Okay, so let me now show you a concept that we're going to understand through this game. Okay, so black just castled. Okay, we as white have done e5. Okay, e5 is an inaccuracy, and you can see it makes black a little bit better than us. Why? It's because we had a very strong center. This looks very good if you're just a beginner intermediate. But here, now we just suddenly gave up a large portion of it and allowed our opponent to do knight to d5. Okay, so we basically allowed him to basically offer a trade. And then if we continue a little bit further on from this example, what happens is bishop to d2, we continue to develop. Okay, knight to c6, he now develops as well. Okay, we've done queen to e2. Okay, which is again an inaccuracy. Our opponent does bishop to g4. We castle big. Okay, so we castle like long. Our opponent does knight takes on e5. After this, what we do as white is bishop to e3. That sequence of moves from the beginning, where we had an inaccuracy, okay, count the amount of inaccuracies that happen. Then d takes on e5, d takes on e5, knight here, bishop to d2, knight to c6, queen to e2, another inaccuracy, bishop to g4, castling long, which is a third mistake, knight takes on e5, bishop to e3. These are 4 mistakes. You see, when we were beginners, what we had in mind is, okay, minimize all of the blunders that happen as much as possible and use the times that your opponent makes them, basically, so that we can level up as fast as possible. Now the problem that happens is our opponents do not do blunders all that often anymore. There are certainly times where they're going to make this, but it's not as often as before. And as you can see now, black is completely winning because they've made this sequence of mistakes beforehand, an inaccuracy and then a mistake and another mistake after this. That is the issue that we have as intermediates now. Let's now move to the second example, and we're going to see this again. So in here, okay, we had pawn to e4, b6, d4, bishop to b7, knight to c3, e6, f3. It's basically a regular opening. White does bishop to d3, helping to enforce this pawn. And now black makes an inaccuracy. Okay, so let's say for a moment that we're moving this to be black. Black makes the move bishop takes on c3, and as you can see, the bar immediately goes in a substantial level in the favor of white. Why is this? Bishop to, so first thing you need to understand, bishops like here are considered better than knights, and that is one thing. Okay, so taking this bishop is an inaccuracy because, well, this knights because generally they are considered worse, yes. But the second thing, this is a blunder because now we've basically missed on a move that we could have made to develop the knight. Okay, like this. We are no longer beginners, so he's gonna see this, okay, which he does. And take a look at this. Now you're left with with one piece which is developed in comparison to your opponent, which is having 2 developed pieces, but he also has a very strong pawn structure. Okay, These slight inaccuracies, they happen for us a lot more. They are the sort of like grease that we need to remove in order to improve from here. And let me just prove this to you. Go right now into your archive and see, is this happening often? Are mistakes and inaccuracies, and if you're an intermediate player, like 1300, 1400, 1200, you're gonna see that you're not making blunders as often, but your mistakes and inaccuracies are relatively still the same, okay? Which is why this happens. So how do we solve this? We need to understand a concept related to chess, which is called imbalances. So imbalance is every slight advantage or disadvantage that you or your opponent has. So for an example, an imbalance which is in the favor of white is the fact that he has a lot of two developed pieces in comparison to black, which has one. Okay. Another imbalance is that he has a lot of his pawns are a lot more forward, so he has a lot more space. These are two imbalances that are in favor of white. They are minor, but when you have a lot of them, then they make a big impact. This is one thing. And now the second thing is, remember, like we've said, okay, we're going to have a thought question process before every move. Ask like very specific questions. Add like two very, very specific ones to help us improve on our position. You either like do checks, captures, and threats, okay? I do it a little bit differently. How can I improve my position? How can I hurt my opponent's position? And just, is it a blunder? And so I'm using this like from my own example. Now you can add like a few more, okay, from my own template. I start with this actually. What does my opponent want? So for example, before I make a mistake, I ask these questions. How can I improve my own position? Okay, this is like the regular template. Third is, how can I damage my opponent's position? Is it a blunder? Okay, and the fifth one, which is now the second new one, which is very, very helpful, is it a good move for me after 3 to 5 moves? That I feel had a very good long-term impact on my elo. So let's now use the concept that we learned, which is imbalances, in the thought question process for this example right here, where we had the first game that we've played. Our opponent have just castled. Now we think the 5 questions. What does my opponent want? From this, he wants to develop, okay? He wants to develop his pieces, because right now, yes, he castled and we haven't, but we have more lead in development in here. Okay, so he wants to close that gap. He wants to basically develop as well. This is what our opponents want. Very good. How can we now improve our own position? We can try to see, okay, can we develop to make the gap a little bit further? There's 2 things that we can do mainly to improve our position. And 2, we can continue to develop. Can we hurt our opponent's position? We don't see a very specific way to hurt his position. Okay, because we don't want to progress here again, because then it's going to dissolve like all the strength that we have in the center. Now, this is the 4th question. The 5th one is the most important. So the 4th one is it a blunder? I assume that you don't really need that anymore, because again, you're not going to make one. But the 5th question, and here is it a blunder? If we think like castling or developing a piece, somehow it doesn't really look like a blunder. But the 5th question, which is the most important, and this is where you should focus the most of your attention, is this good? Is this move that I'm thinking about? Okay, so for an example, castling, or moving the bishop here, or moving the pawn here, which was the inaccuracy that happened. Is this move good for me after 3 to 5 moves? And let's really think about this. If we do this move, okay, pawn here, he is likely to take, okay, he wants to dissolve the sort of like center that we have built. We are likely to take back, okay, now the pawn is going to be here, then here, the knight. Then we are likely to take here as well to threaten his knight here. He's probably going to move, okay, this knight somewhere, okay? He's likely to take it and either move back, which we don't think is very good for him. It's just going to be like moving back a knight, like why would you do that? He's likely to move it here. The queen is going to be in an array with the knight, because it's going to be safe for him. And now what happens is he has a knight here, and a pawn, and our white pawn is going to be here. Is it that good for us after like 3 to 5 moves? We're not that sure. Now we're going to stop for a moment and look, okay, are there other moves? There is this move which looks good for us. There's castling that looks good for us. What is he likely to do? He's very likely to develop either a bishop or this knight. This is what he wants again. Is it good for us after 3 to 5 moves? It doesn't look bad for us that much. After 3 to 5 moves, you can probably like calculate this. He again is going to develop. You're going to develop as well. But there's another move which also looks very nice, which is bishop to e3, for example. If you're gonna calculate, I'm not sure if this is that good, okay, but you're gonna have a move like this, for example, okay, where you're saying, okay, he wants to develop, okay, and I want to keep the gap to have between us in development, so I'm gonna develop my bishop as well. You're going to stop inaccuracies and mistakes from happening just like this. This is basically how I leveled up from a sort of like intermediate into 1700. That I think helped me the most. And so that you could take the most possibly can from this video, there's some action steps that you can do right now over the next like few hours that would really help. So the first thing that you can do is write down the new thought question process. What does our opponent want? How can we improve our own position? How can we damage our opponent's position? Is it a blunder? And is the move that we're thinking about looks good after the next 3 to 5 moves? A new thought question process that you can write down and stick somewhere very close to you. And the idea is we will naturally add the new questions into our play, just like we've done this when we were beginners. Okay, this is the first thing. And the second thing that we can do is we can play versus bots. This time, bots that are a lot better than you. So if you're 1400, for example, right now, or 1300, or even 1200, play versus bots that are a lot better. 1600 and 1700, if for that matter. The idea is we're not looking immediately to win, but we're just looking to really maximize how natural it is for us to actually do this. 2 actions, and I would say best if you play versus like 3 bots, okay, then you're gonna have the most progress in this. 1 and 2, what you can also do is for the next times you go to play chess is play very long games, so not just 20, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, play 30 minutes and above. That will help you to also practice and calculate, because you can notice like now there is also a little bit of calculation that we add. And if you want to learn more from chess videos like this, then you can consider subscribing. If you want, I can take you personally from intermediate, or even if you're still a beginner watching this, all the way up into 1600. Okay, that is the first link in the description. If you have any questions about this thing, leave them below. I will answer them, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.